Okay, so we started recording and welcome to everybody to this new installment of the International Legumes Society webinars. Today we start with an announcement. There is our upcoming conference. You can see on the screen, hopefully. The conference will be in Dubrovnik, and it's an important moment to us. We have this conference every 3 years. We only skipped once for COVID, so at the time we did after a 4-year period. It's an important chance for everybody for seeing each other, doing networking, hearing from other groups what's the state of the art in the legume world. All the information are on the dedicated on our website, but also on the conference dedicated website, ils5.info. You are still in time to submit abstract for poster presentation. At this point, abstract for oral are not accepted anymore. If you participate to the conference, you become member of the Legume Society. There are small benefits. There are some dedicated announcement and mailing list for all the members. And if you participate, the most tangible thing that you can bring home, we have an agreement with Legume Science Journal, which is a Wiley journal that will collect a special issue dedicated to the conference, 10 papers. 3 papers will be there free of article processing charges. And more info as we go on. I hope to see you all in Dubrovnik. Now I stop sharing. And for today, we go back on the usual track. And I welcome our speaker for today, Francisco Castro Alves. He's a research program officer at the European Commission under DG Agri. And today we are going to listen about the role of legumes in the European Commission landscape. We are going to listen about policies and programs. So, Francisco, please, the microphone is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everyone. First of all, as Nelson said, my name is Francisco. I work at DG Agri, Directorate for Agriculture and Rural Development at European Commission, and specifically at the F2 unit, which is the unit in charge for research and innovation, namely by supporting or coordinating the programming of research and innovation within Horizon Europe, as well as provide input from a research innovation perspective to all the policies developed within DG Agri and within the European Commission from an agricultural perspective. I take this opportunity and in this beginning to also thank the International Legumes Society for the invitation. It's really a pleasure to have this opportunity to talk with you today, to reach out to the community. I know it's important to stay connected, to dialogue, and these exchanges that you promote between scientists, between researchers, but also between other actors of the value chains and now policymakers. I think it's very relevant to make sure that altogether we can advance legumes and protein crops in the EU. So starting now, I will have a short presentation for you today. I hope you find it insightful. I will start now by provide you an introduction in which I set the basis and the ground for the rest of the presentation. I will give an overview on the view of the European Commission in the topic of plant protein, and then we'll also go into detail into specifically protein crops and legumes. But really to show you what is the base and where does everything come from. Then I will follow with the policy context for protein crops, including legumes. I will talk about the Common Agricultural Policy. So as you all know, the cornerstone of agricultural policy in Europe. I will follow by introducing you and talking about the new research innovation strategic approach for agriculture, forests, and rural areas, a very strategic document that is being developed also by the European Commission and which may have an important impact for the sector. And then the second part of the And in the second part of the presentation, I will talk about research innovation programming. I'll give you looking into the years of Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe with an overview of the investments made, as well as a short summary of the ongoing research and a quick view on upcoming opportunities and next steps for the sector at EU level. So as an introduction, and as I said, a quick overview from where does the EU stand. In 2024, the European Commission compiled a lot of data and information about the broad protein system, and specifically with important chapters on plant protein. So here I don't talk only about legumes or protein crops, but the broad plant protein. And within the arable crop sector, the EU produced in the period 2023-2024, 64 million tons of crude protein, so the protein content in crops. And at the bottom left, we can see how this production was distributed. So mainly with 46% of rougage and 43% cereals, and smaller percentages for oilseeds with 9% and dry pulses 2%. However, this production does not fulfill the EU demand for protein crops and for plant protein specifically, as the food, feed, and industrial sectors still need to import around 19 million tons of crude protein. So it was identified a clear gap between supply and demand, and therefore the need to coordinate efforts through research innovation, through enhanced production, through diversifying suppliers to reduce this dependency on imports. On the bottom right, we can see a figure in which the orange bars, they account for the non-EU origin plant protein, and we can see that the biggest share is regarding soybean. So this is where we stand. This was the evaluation and the analysis that the European Commission did in 2024, and this has been the driver and the important data that we based our activities in order to indeed make informed policy and programs. On this basis, and still in 2024, three very important fact sheets were produced in the field. One indeed addressing important data on supply and demand of proteins for food and feed, in which again there is detailed information on which crops are produced, which crops are importing origins, as well as a very interesting separation between the food and the feed sector. So we really can understand the big picture and understand where are the opportunities, where are the challenges within the sector. A second fact sheet looking specifically into the Common Agricultural Policy and what are the interventions and the tools available within the CAP to support and promote the production and use of protein crops. And here also very relevant because it informs member states and policymakers on what are the tools available for them to support the sector. And last but not least, a fact sheet on research and innovation, compiling all the research innovation produced since Horizon 2020, so 2014, that contributed to this reduction of the EU dependency on plant protein imports. And here, of course, you can see a clear sign on the importance of the sector of the research innovation for the plant protein sector. Moving from there and from this very big picture, I will now go into detail into the policy context for protein crops, including legumes. And here, looking back in the shorter term, I would like to start by the beginning of 2024, January 2024, in which the European Commission started the dialogue on the future of EU agriculture. And here there are two very important elements to highlight. It was the first time in a long time that the European Commission started a dialogue in the sector of agriculture with two very important conditions. First, the farmers were at the center of this dialogue. They were the important element, the cornerstone that links value chain, that links research and practice. But at the same time, the European Commission also introduced an holistic approach by inviting for this dialogue other stakeholders within the value chain, food business, industries, input suppliers, retailers, to make sure that this dialogue does not evolve in silos, to make sure that this dialogue is connected with the reality. And for example, that we do not discuss only the production and we completely disregard the demand. These both, they need to be connected, they need to be in touch to produce insightful and impactful outcomes. From this dialogue, a bit more than 1 year later, in February 2025, the European Commission, following this dialogue, published the Vision for Agriculture and Food. This is a really strategic document that provided, in which first European Commission took a stand on what has been achieved, what are the strengths of the EU, but at the same time identified gaps, weaknesses, challenges, and therefore, based on this, the vision defines some actions, some initiatives that European Commission would like to implement in order to create these enabling conditions so the agri-food sector can thrive, innovate, and also do this in a sustainable way, benefiting not only today and tomorrow, but also in the future and future generations. And this is the document that has been guiding the actions within agriculture at European level. And last but not least, a quick mention to July 2025, in which the European Commission, put forward and presented multi-annual financial framework proposal, including here a proposal for the Common Agricultural Policy after 2027. So this MFF is the budget for the European Commission, for the European Union between 2028 and 2034. So, and it's currently being negotiated and under discussion with the European Commission, European Parliament, and the Council. So we are really living at the moment in a transitioning moment, in a moment in which very important decisions are being taken. And it's important, a very important and critical moment for the sector. But now looking into detail into the vision for agriculture and food, it had 4 main pillars. The attractiveness, making farming a viable and appealing career, and here very important focus on young farmers and future generations. competitiveness, strengthening the sector position in global markets. Again, here, this global and big picture. Future-proofing, embracing innovation and sustainability for long-term resilience. Here, very important keywords: innovation, sustainability, and resilience. And connection, valuing food and fostering fair living, working conditions in rural areas. And all of these pillars, they were transformed into actions. So they are already in action and put into practice. And for example, during this year, the European Commission delivered in several of them. For example, presented the bioeconomy strategy, delivered the generational renewal strategy, enhanced the EU Agri-Food Chain Observatory, as well as reviewed the Common Market Organization regulation, namely on addressing some unfair trading practices. So the work is being done. Hopefully, and during this year, we will share or implement further this vision for agriculture and food in order to create value for the sector and answer to the challenges of the sector. Now, in terms of the vision and specific references to protein and relevant for legumes, this was a topic that was a few times mentioned within the vision for agriculture and food. Once more, the European Commission recognized that the EU protein supply is heavily reliant on high quality imports, and the high quality imports refers to plant protein with a high content of protein, and specifically or particularly for the use in feed. And of course, this creates vulnerabilities in our food system, namely related to market fluctuations and sustainability risks. Based on this, the same vision stated that the way that protein is produced and consumed in the EU needs to be considered, and proposed to develop a comprehensive plan to create a more self-sufficient and sustainable EU protein system, and here having in the very central or a very important element plant protein, protein crops, and of course legumes. Now moving on to the Common Agricultural Policy, I will provide you a few elements of the ongoing Common Agricultural Policy linked to legumes. Since the very first day that the regulation for the ongoing CAP was implemented, protein crops were clearly defined within the regulation. So protein crops including legumes and mixtures of legumes and grasses, provided that legumes remain predominant in the mixture. And here are some examples below, from dry pulses, grain legumes, several types of beans, lentils, chickpeas, and of course soybeans as well, to give you just some examples. Then also within this regulation, legumes and protein crops were highlighted as the need to support of protein crops production in order to reduce human deficit in this regard. And again, given the unit's deficit on plant protein and the environmental benefits their production brings, legumes should be included among the products. So from the very beginning of the CAP, protein crops and legumes specifically were high on the agenda, and we'll shortly see what were the results. And also the last point, highlight also the mention of protein crops in the communication on ensuring availability and affordability of fertilizers from 2022, in which they incentivize crop diversification and enhance rotation with inclusion of protein crops. Now moving to the CAP specifically and the tools available to support protein crops. We have several. We have the couple income support. So here there is a specific financial support linked to specific crops. And here, following the implementation of the strategic plans, 20 out of 28 CAP strategic plans implemented this support for protein crops. This is very positive. We can see below the figure on the left that 12.2% of the expenditure of this coupled income support was dedicated to protein crops. And we can see on the right information on the area planned for protein crops, as well as the funding requested and already paid. Second, we have the eco schemes and the agri-environmental and climate commitments. And here, nearly all member states have planned at least one intervention in relation to leguminous and nitrogen-fixing crops. And third, the sectoral intervention. This was a new possibility under the current CAP, in which member states could extend the sectoral interventions to sectors of their choice, and only 2 member states targeted protein crops, but also only 6 member states really used this tool. So it was still positive sign for protein crops. And the last point 4, also under the CAP, cooperation and innovation. We have here a slide focused on that. We have the work developed under the IP Agri, very relevant. There was a specific focus group, which is a temporary group of selected experts that focus on a specific subject, that do the state of art and also explore practical and innovative solutions for the problems and opportunities in the sector derived from related projects. And we have a specific one on protein crops that looked into production of protein crops and the climate change, and that is already a final report published that you can consult. Also, several operational groups were created dedicated to protein crops, and the operational groups are groups of people with complementary knowledge from scientific, practical, technical, organizational, and again, co-create practical solutions within an innovation project. So all these efforts and all of these groups were funded under the Common Agricultural Policy and with a very strong link to innovation. So it's a very important hook and a very important channel to transform research and innovation into actionable and practice implementation. Now, looking into the future, as I said before, there are ongoing negotiations. We are in a very critical moment for the CAP, so there are not many updates ongoing. The CAP remains essential to support farmers. We know that in 2020, on average, 23% of the farm income still came from CAP direct payments. But our goal as DG Agri and as stated by the European Commission is that the future CAP within the MFF proposal will be simpler, more targeted to support an ambitious and future-oriented agricultural policy. And now moving still within the policy, but to the research and innovation strategic approach for agriculture, forests and rural areas. This document is being developed by DG Agri and with the goal of set the main strategy and the main lines for research, innovation, agriculture, forests and rural areas for the next years with the view of 2040. So indeed, the goal is to link and to have an research innovation strategic approach that links and enables the vision for agriculture and food, that looks into attractiveness, competitiveness, but also sustainability, resilience, and fairness of the sector. And it aims to create a long-term framework for co-creating research and innovation priorities on agriculture, forestry, and rural areas. So the programming from now on will always have this document as a main guidance and to provide the strategic orientations for further program development in the future. This document will update the 2016 strategic approach to EU agricultural research and innovation. Of course, it aims also to reflect currency policy development, such as the vision, the upcoming Horizon Europe, and also the upcoming new European Competitiveness Fund, but of course also the changing conditions, geopolitical conditions in the world, climate change, and so on and so forward. It's time to update this strategic approach and to provide an updated version, leveraging the existing and future instruments. And this strategic approach adoption is planned for mid-2026. Now, moving into the programs, I will first give you a short overview of the implementation of research innovation, EU-funded research innovation through Horizon. So including from 2014, including Horizon 2020, Horizon Europe, and European Innovation Partnerships, such as the Agroecology Partnership, in which several projects were developed to improve the competitiveness, the sustainability, the resilience of the sector, to answer to the sector needs, and of course, ultimately, also to reduce the EU dependence on imported plant protein. On the fact sheet on research and innovation that I mentioned earlier in the presentation, we look into research and innovation for supply of protein, for feed demand, but we also include alternative protein sources, as well as we look specifically to the EIP Agri and EU CAP network. Here we can have an overview of the research and innovation investments through Horizon, so to support the needs and the gaps identified in earlier studies and in earlier research. The research and innovation projects address different parts and challenges of the agri-food systems and value chains. During this time, we funded projects linked to crop rotation, grazing, and cover crops, broadly legumes, but also specifically for plant breeding and underutilized crops. And here I would like to emphasize a very important thing. All these projects are providing a very important contribution, strengthening the role of the legumes. First and foremost, of course, by adding on scientific knowledge and scientific advancements, but as well as contributing for the business integration by creating products or processes with some commercial value, and as well as providing feedback to policy to make sure that the results of these research innovation projects also allow for a more informed policy making, to make sure that policymakers at European but also at national and regional levels create policies that are informed of the latest scientific developments and that can really update it and add value for the sector as a whole. So it's very key for us at the moment, in the past, but at the moment more than ever, to really focus on the best way to exploit and to uptake the value of these research results in Horizon. Here we have an overview of these investments. As I said before, they were categorized in different types of fields, let's say. Plant breeding during Horizon 2020, more than 44 million, and Horizon Europe, more than 29. Then link to ecosystem services valorization and value chains development. We see 41 million in Horizon 2020 and more than 37 in Horizon Europe. Then underutilized crops, including legumes, more than 23 million in Horizon 2020. And also in Horizon 2020, legume-based crop rotation, grassland systems and cover crops, more than 22 million. So more than 196 million throughout the programs. And two very important elements that I'd like to highlight here. This investment is to EU countries, but also partners within EU countries, but also to associated countries. So countries such as Switzerland, Canada, Japan, or more recently Australia can also take part in these projects. And here, as you know, you are scientists. This is collaborative research, and it's very important to have this diversity geographically within the consortia, but as well as having different backgrounds from science, from farmers, from business, from suppliers. Here is really important to have this mix that brings academia, civil society, business, to make sure that really the outcome is in line also with the real life needs. And another element is that throughout the Horizon programs, it was created a specific portfolio of research and innovation projects for protein crops, including legumes. So this research is not fragmented between the different portfolios, being crop protection, food, feed, and really that they work in a coherent way, in such a way that we have an overview that on the research that was funded, that is being funded, and also we can build on the results of these projects in a strategic and again coherent way to decide also on future research needs, together, of course, with the research and innovation community. So there is a dedicated portfolio, there is a dedicated focus, and this also shows how strategic is the sector for the European Commission. Now, looking to the present and a little bit to the future, as you know, we are in the current Horizon Europe program under the Cluster 6, Food, Bioeconomy, Natural Resources, Agriculture and Environment, with a total over the entire period of 9 billion of budget. And we are currently already published the current work program 2026 and 2027, in which you have the latest opportunities for funding research and innovation in the field. As I said, it's a moment of transition. We are ending one program and starting another. And currently, the protein crops portfolio has 8 active projects. Some of you, I know, are attending this webinar. We have portfolios. We have projects within the portfolio looking into plant breeding, such as the legume generation and bellies. We have projects looking into intercropping and the benefits of legumes, intercrop values and leguminose. We have projects looking into the development of new value chains, Valpropath, and the remaining 3, Legendary, Legumes, and Valereco, are looking into ecosystem services, valorization. So within the current portfolio, we have more than 60 million invested, looking, as you can see, to very different parts of the agri-food system, from genetics, plant breeding, to new farming practices and regenerative agriculture, such as intercropping, to ecosystem services valorization, and to value chain creation. So also this holistic approach and to bring these different parts and research in different parts of the system and value chain is key to ensure a comprehensive approach to research and innovation. This portfolio will soon grow. 2 new projects will be added, recently funded under the topic on enhancing plant protein production to bolster the resilience of agricultural systems and EU self-sufficiency in plant protein used as feed. So very much in line with the needs identified in previous research and previous data analysis. And there is an ongoing open call, which will close in a few days, on boosting the competitiveness of protein crops in Europe. So a very horizontal call in which applicants are encouraged to put forward their different solutions to improve the competitiveness of protein crops at farm level, at value chain level, and of course, as we have seen also from this macro perspective at global level. And now quickly a view into the upcoming research and innovation. So as I had the opportunity to mention during the presentation, we are in a transitioning moment. There are many things happening at the moment, negotiations, new strategies being developed. So it's critical to keep the momentum for protein crops and for legumes. So with the forthcoming strategic approach for research and innovation for agriculture, forest and rural areas, the implementation of the vision and the future CAP, the legume sector will have further opportunities and grow to research and innovation. And here I would like you to save in your calendar the 24th and 25th of September of this year, the Agri Research Conference, in which we will invite stakeholders from the different pathways and the different topics to contribute to co-create together the research and innovation pathway. So you will have the opportunity to provide your input and feedback on what you think should be the way to go. And here I invite you to save this date and to stay tuned to register in this event, because it's a key opportunity to make your argument for legumes and to be active in the field at EU level. And lastly, these advancements and these objectives that I've mentioned to reduce the EU imports on plant protein, to overcome the sector challenges, to improve competitiveness. It relies heavily on research, on funded research as well. And this research, of course, relies on its research community. And I know that the International Legume Society and its members are important contributors. So here, as my last words, I would like to encourage you to stay involved, to keep on expanding your research. And I hope this webinar is also the beginning of a longer dialogue that we can keep, because I'm looking forward also to hear from your research, from your results, and also to collect your input and to learn more about legumes. So thank you very much for today, and I hope to see you again in the context of the International Legume Society or of one of our research and innovation projects in Horizon. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Francisco. Thanks for the nice, very interesting talk. A little bit of a refresher compared to our usual webinars when we discuss in the merit of scientific details, etc. But it's a very important framework. Now, there's questions from the chat that could be, or from the audience, that could be a good moment to speak up. Meanwhile, I break the ice. Can you tell us a little bit more about this Agri Research Conference? I quickly scanned. I would like to, if possible, to also share a link with the participant. If you have something right on your hand, we can put it in the chat. Otherwise, I look it up. But it's something that. First of all, it's something that it's an event that needs to be. We need to actually be physically present. Will it be streamed? How does it work?
Great. No, thank you for the question. I believe that the registration and the event page is not available online yet. Okay, there is currently, and I can share with you in the chat later. There is currently already a survey open as we speak that is asking for contributions for speakers, for teams, for projects that want to put forward their results or their case studies. That is the stage that it is at the moment. I believe that the event will be hybrid, so part of the sessions will be also online and part will be only in person. And we will have several sessions. They are still under discussion, but we'll have horizontal sessions, for example, looking into the AKIs and the innovation systems, agricultural knowledge and innovation systems, and how could we improve the knowledge uptake across sectors. But then we'll have specific sessions looking into crop systems, looking into soil health, digitalization. So it will be a very interesting and comprehensive research conference. And the last time it happened, if I'm not mistaken, was 3 years ago. So usually it happens every 3 years.
Okay. Okay, thanks. If you could, then we'll circulate links if you have something on your hand. I see that there's a couple of raised hands. So the first one is from Tom. Hi, Tom.
Okay, hello. Thank you, Francisco, for the nice presentation. You were talking about the Horizon program, and I wonder if you think there will be incentives for farmers to grow more protein crops into the future, post 2026 or 27. Do you think there will be more incentives or less in the future?
Well, it's a bit difficult to anticipate. As I said, it's a very critical moment now, and the negotiations are at a very high level within the European Commission and the Parliament and the Council. From what you can see, and as I mentioned, the signs being in the vision for agriculture and food, and the commitment to deliver this comprehensive plan on protein, and also the growing goal of indeed reducing the import of proteins. I think the signs would indicate that this would be a possibility, that the ongoing incentives or even newer incentives may be created, but this is ultimately still under discussion. So it's difficult to anticipate. As of within the Horizon Europe, so still part of the next MFF, but within the Horizon Europe, we still have to program. But as I mentioned before, we have a specific portfolio for protein crops, and we have been implementing this strategic approach to the investment for a long time. So the expectation is that this investment will keep.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think if there are incentives for farmers to grow more legume crops, it will also incentivize breeding programs to breed more, and the two will boost each other. Thank you. That was more of a comment.
Okay, we have Bernadette. Hi, Bernadette.
Yes, thanks. Hello, Francisco. Thanks for this presentation. It's very interesting. I have two questions. One is about the dialogue you have done in January 2024. I was wondering, it's just a naive question, how do you make sure that all types of stakeholders are contributing to the discussion? And I can continue with the second question, that is, I completely agree with the protein, the need to increase the protein autonomy, and why don't we speak also on nitrogen autonomy? Because we know that it's the same problem maybe, but it's not the same way to present it. Thanks.
Thank you, Bernadette. So for the first question, and talking about the strategic dialogue, it was already, I was not involved directly, but there were applications for the dialogue. So it was an open process and very transparent process. Stakeholders representing farmers, large farmers, smaller farmers, industry, NGOs were invited to apply. And then the European Commission selected a group of stakeholders, again, following these two main rules, having the farmers. So there was a high higher representation of farmers, but academia was there, industry was there, retailers were there. So the list is even public if you would like to consult on the strategic dialogue. So it was made really an effort to make it representative, and many times using, of course, umbrella organizations that represent several farmers, for example, from several countries, and this kind of organization. But it was really, of course, there was a limit. I don't recall how many were the participants. There was, of course, a limited, so some needed to stay out, but it was at the time really a strong effort to have everyone in the room, and it was very appreciated by the stakeholders at the time. Even, and in the end, it was produced a document that was consensually adopted by all the stakeholders. So this was a very holistic process, let's say. And as I said, you can find more information. I also don't have more information online on the strategic dialogue with the list of participants, the person, and the organization. As for your second question, indeed, that's a very important point that is being stressed also by other services within the Commission and other stakeholders. The European Commission is also currently working in a fertilizer action plan to answer to this need to reduce again the dependency on external suppliers, and protein crops are also included in this scope, and their contributions to this topic are also considered. So indeed, this is sometimes maybe a point of view that is overlooked, but is also being included by our colleagues working directly with fertilizers, and also the fact that protein crops may help us to reduce the use of chemicals, and the input of fertilizer is being considered as part of the value added and the value proposition of protein crops. Thank you very much, but it was a very good question.
Okay, I see that there's meanwhile thanks Francisco, you put the link of the current survey for the Agro Research Conference in the chat. I see somebody from India asking for collaborate on joint proposals. You can contact them if you want. There's a question from the chat. Are there any ongoing or planned initiative aimed at increasing the involvement of Asian countries with extensive expertise in legume research? So what about the east side of the world?
Well, this is usually very much dealt and negotiated at a higher level. So when there are increasing the partnerships, the Horizon Europe partnerships and associated countries is negotiated country-wise and across sectors. So it's usually our colleagues at DG that negotiate these agreements. And then after the countries are within the group of associated countries, is about it's all for them and their stakeholders, their universities and so on to take part in consortia. So there is not a specific push or a specific initiative for Asian countries. There are the Horizon Europe agreements in place, and then it's up to the research community, as always, to create the consortia and to come up with the ideas for the research projects. So in this case, we don't have preferences. It's really an open process, and it's also up to the applicants to increase their participation.
Okay, thanks. I guess that also some people will have some concerns, or at least wanted opinion on the other side. That would be the other signed agreement, that would be the Mercosur, but I don't know if that opens up a little too much our discussion. So let's hear. Oh, I see that you also put a second link to the strategic dialogue on the future. Thanks. Are there any other question from the chat? Okay, seems we are good. So thanks again, Francisco. It was super informative. I hope that this will be also a start of a more close dialogue between our society and the EU, because we have clearly convergent interests. And to everybody, I remind again that in a couple of months we'll have our big conference, and as usual, next month we'll have the next session, the next webinar, that probably will be the last one before the summer break. So thanks to everyone for being here.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.